Now, when it comes to our table manners, we do absolutely have a list of things we talk about. Sitting, we've covered. Elbows never on the table. And, if you're having a romantic meal with a loved one and you're leaning across with a coffee and a tea afterwards, then that's fine. But rule of thumb, especially with formal get-togethers or at someone's home, you don't want to be sitting on the table with your elbows. We always offer to pass things on the table. For example, if I'm sitting at the head of the table here, and we should pick up body language. So I can see Jack looking around the table and say, Jack, may I pass you the salt and pepper? And then I would pass it down. And as I mentioned the other day, pass the salt, pass the sorrow. We don't do hand. I would lay the pear in front of Amanda. Amanda would then pass it down to Jack. I noticed that Jae-young hasn't got any water, so may I pour you a glass of water, or things like that. Would you care for some bread? And we would be very thoughtful and making sure that everyone is provided for around the table. Anything I can pass you? Bread, there's a thing that says, it should go in a certain direction. I'm seriously over that. What I would tend to do with the bread basket, if Jae-young was on my left, which you are, off you, would you take it and you use your fingers? I would then take one and then I'll pass it to Amanda. Amanda will take one and pass it down the table. You get a situation where waitering team come up and they say, would you care for, and they've got tongs and you choose a bread. Okay, bread we never dip in our soup. As much as the soup might be delicious, and we don't go, in the sauce of our beautiful dinner plate. If you're in an Italian family or you're in a certain, and they do that, follow suit by all means. But rule of thumb is, in a fine dining session, if you want to lick the plate, it's so wretchedly good. But you won't be invited back, put it that way. Right, so salt we've talked about. Now, there's a wonderful phrase that some of you may be aware of and some of you may not be aware of. It's called, that person definitely thinks they're above their salt. Anyone ever heard that phrase? Or that person's beneath their salt? Have you ever heard that phrase at all? Margaret, you've heard it, yeah? It's fascinating. And this is the thing about all these things that come to light. And it's exactly what Katie was saying. When you go to the museum up in Greenwich, you find all these little isms. Sleep tight. Back in the day, they used to have rope that with the springs, so they would tighten the rope so sleep tight. Your so-called strings or ropes that the mattress sat on, you would tighten it. That's where sleep tight comes from. All these funny little things, and I will be explaining to you where daylight robbery comes from. But back in the early stages of when the Portuguese and the explorers started to bring these beautiful herbs and spices, and salt was exceptionally expensive, and they had these ornate salt cellars on the table. And only the upper class, the upper echelon of society who sat above the salt were allowed to administer salt onto their food. Anyone beneath the salt were not allowed to administer salt. And so salt was administered with great care as well. They didn't just go, shh. They put a small mound of salt on their plate, or if it was soup, they put a small amount of salt into the palm of their hand and they would just drizzle the salt and put the remnants onto their side plate. Not the salt shaker. That is just a no-no. You'd make if it's your dinner plate, you put a small mound of salt on a section, and we'll do that in practice today, and it's in the video material. So salt is a really interesting one to talk about. Chewing and noises, we definitely don't want to do that. And awkward situations are a glass falling over. Don't make a hoo-ha about it. I'd take my napkin, I would cover the spillage. Jack might take his napkin, cover the spillage, and then a member of staff, hopefully, or your host, would see that something needs attention. If there's hair in your food, just remove it. Don't make a big scene about it. Don't make it about, wow, there's hair in my food, and just remove it. If there's something that's a bit more active than a piece of hair, like an insect or something, again, don't make a big song and dance about it. Just get some attention from the waiter. Get the attention of the waiter, waitress. Please, won't you just help them? They will see what's going on.